Your boy was never worth that bike, my brother said after handing my kid's new bike to his son at our cookout. Dad laughed. He'd trash it in a week anyway. I didn't argue. I just took my kid home, opened my laptop, and by 8:12 p.m., my brother was standing in his driveway staring at something that wasn't there. My name is Iris. I am 34 years old. I have lived in Nashville for 9 years, the last 4 of them in a house I own on Caldwell Avenue in East Nashville, 12 minutes from my parents, and about 40 minutes from feeling like a full person again on most days. I run a general contracting company called Callaway Home Renovations. We do residential remodeling, kitchens, bathrooms, additions, the occasional full gut. I have a general contractor's license, which I earned at 27 after 4 years working under a GC who taught me more in a single walkthrough than most people learn in a semester. I employ 6 people full-time and pull from a sub-roster when the job requires it. 4 years ago, I also built something else. Something I did not set out to build as a business, exactly. It started because I kept getting calls for trades I didn't cover. Plumbing, vac, electrical. And I was tired of saying I don't have anyone I trust for that. So I started a list. Then I made the list shareable. Then I added a booking interface because clients kept asking if they could schedule through me. Then I added contractor profiles and review scores because the quality control question came up constantly. Now it is a platform called Nashville Contractors Network, and it has 140 registered contractors, and it generates somewhere around $280 in a year in booked referrals, and I am the sole administrator. My brother Craig has been on that platform for 3 years. He has never paid the $60 monthly fee that every other contractor on the platform pays. I set him up as a family listing. I did not formalize it. I did not put it in writing. I handed it to him the way you hand your brother something you built because he is your brother, and it costs you nothing. In the moment, and you are not thinking about what happens later. I was not thinking about later. My son Theo is 8. He has my eyes and his father's patience, which is to say he will wait longer than anyone should have to before he says anything. The divorce was 2 years ago. It was not dramatic. It was 2 people who had become logistically compatible and emotionally separate, and we handled it the way adults handle a thing they both understand is over. Theo sees his dad every other weekend. His dad is not a villain in this story. There are no villains in this story, technically. Just a brother who believed that things naturally flowed toward him, and a father who had always arranged for them to, and a boy who saved $47 in a piggy bank over 5 months and never said a word about it. I found the piggy bank 3/4 empty in February. Theo had counted out the coins himself. Birthday money, chore money, the $1 he got from his dad's mother at Christmas, the $5 he had earned helping my neighbor carry groceries 2 separate times. He had not told me he was saving because he wanted to surprise me. He wanted to show me he could contribute. He had seen me work. He had been watching the way children watch. And he understood something about the relationship between effort and outcome that I had not explicitly taught him, which meant he had learned it from watching me live it. He was saving for a bike. He had picked it out online, shown me the picture once in passing, said, "Isn't that cool?" in the particular voice children use when they are trying not to want something too hard in front of you. I had said yes, it was really cool. I had noted the model number in my phone without telling him. In June, I bought the bike. It cost $189. I covered the $142. He $47 and handed it to me in a ziplock bag of mixed bills and quarters. 3 separate denominations rubber banded together because he had organized it, and he was so proud he could not stand still while I counted it. He kept asking if it added up right. It added up exactly right. It was a good bike. Silver and red 20-inch wheels, a bell on the handlebars because he had asked specifically for a bell, said bells were important, said how else does anyone know you are coming? I told him that was a good point. He rang the bell 6 times on the way out of the store. He rode it to my parents' house on the day of the cookout. Asked if he could. I said yes. He rode the whole way over while I drove alongside him in the car, which is the kind of thing you do when your child is 8 and wants to ride his bike somewhere, and you are not ready to simply let him go ahead without you. To understand the cookout, you have to understand the 20 years before it, which I will give you in plain terms, because that is how I understand things. I am a contractor. I build things in order. Foundation first, then frame, then the finish work that people actually see. The foundation is this. My brother Craig is 3 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, the things in our family traveled in one direction, toward him, not dramatically, not with any cruelty anyone could point to, just steadily the way water finds its level. The way a family's energy finds the person it has decided is the center. When Craig was 16, my parents bought him a used pickup truck. When I was 16 and needed transportation to the after-school job I had taken to save for the things I understood were not going to be given to me, my dad showed me the bus route on his phone, the 24 line, and told me the bus was good for character. I took the bus for 2 years, including the winter mornings when the stop was not plowed and the route ran 20 minutes late, and I stood in the cold with my work clothes under my coat and told myself this was temporary. It was temporary. I'm not telling you this as a grievance. I'm telling you it is the foundation. You have to understand the foundation before the frame makes sense. When Craig started his handyman business at 28, my parents gave him $6 zeros to cover his first year of tools and insurance. They called it a loan. It was never repaid. It was never mentioned again at any dinner table in any year since. I know the amount because Craig told me once without embarrassment, as a piece of information rather than a confession, $6,000. Like he was telling me the square footage of a room. I have a small business loan of my own. I repaid mine. I mention this only because I think the contrast is instructive, and because nobody would call it instructive if I said it out loud, so I am saying it here instead, where Craig cannot tell me I am keeping score. When I started Callaway Home Renovations at 27, I used savings from 6 years of working for a GC named Bernard, who paid me fairly and taught me everything, and a small business loan I applied for myself and paid back over 3 years at 6.8% interest. My parents came to the first job site walkthrough I invited them to, a kitchen remodel in Germantown, and my dad put his arm around my shoulder and said he was proud. That moment was real. I keep it. I am not revising it. I am just also telling you that 3 months before that moment, he had co-signed Craig's lease on a work van without being asked, without being called, without any process at all. Craig had simply mentioned he needed the van and my father had said he would handle it. When I had asked my father 4 years earlier whether he would co-sign my first business line of credit, he had said it wasn't something he was comfortable with. Same request, same family, different child. The pattern is not always visible until you look at it whole. Most patterns aren't. They operate through individual moments that each seem reasonable, each seem like they could be explained, each seem like the product of circumstance rather than design. It is only when you line them up that you see they are not random. They are a direction. And the direction was away from me, and later, away from my son. I want to be specific about that second part. Because the first part, the part about me, I had made my peace with. I had built my company and my platform and my house on Caldwell Avenue, and I had done it with my own savings and my own license and my own 3 years of loan payments, and the fact that it had been harder than it needed to be had not broken me. It had in some ways made me more precise, more careful with what I built and more careful about who I let into it. The part I had not made peace with was watching it extend to Theo. That was the part that required a different kind of response. What I watched over the years was the pattern extend. Theo was born, and the pattern looked at him and made its assessment. And the assessment was that he was on my side of the ledger, which meant he received what I had received, which was the genuine love of a family that also quietly, consistently, did not quite count him the way it counted Craig's son Bryce. Bryce is 9, he is a good kid, he has done nothing wrong, neither has Theo. The boys are not the story. The story is what the adults did around the boys. And I want you to understand that before the bike there was already a list, not written down anywhere, not compiled on purpose, just accumulated the way things accumulate when you are paying attention and cannot stop yourself from noticing. Theo's 4th birthday party, a Saturday in March. I sent the invitation 6 weeks in advance. My parents confirmed they would come. 3 days before the party, my mother called and said they were sorry. They had realized they were already committed to Bryce's 3rd birthday party that same weekend. Craig had planned it for the same date without checking. They hoped it would be okay if they came by the next day for cake. The next day visit lasted 40 minutes. During those 40 minutes, my father took a call from Craig in the kitchen and stayed there for 25 minutes discussing Craig's upcoming drywall job. Theo blew out the leftover candles a second time for my father when he came back to the table. My father said, "Great job, buddy," and looked at his phone. Theo's 2nd grade play. He had the role of a tree in a production about the seasons. He had one line and he had practiced it for 3 weeks, standing in the hallway outside his room and delivering it to the wall with the particular seriousness of a child who has decided this matters and is going to do it right. My father had promised he would come. That morning, Craig texted him with a plumbing situation, a broken fixture, the kind of thing that takes an hour. My father went to help instead. He texted me during the performance. "How'd it go?" Theo's line was, "I have been here longer than you know." He said it perfectly. I did not tell my father that. I said, "Fine, he was great." I have thought about that lie occasionally since. I do not think I would change it. These are 2 things. There are more. I am giving you 2 because the rest of them have the same shape. And once you understand the shape, you do not need every instance. What you need to understand is that Theo, at 8 years old, had already learned from this family, from these specific patterns, that asking did not always work on certain sides of certain relationships. He had learned it the way children learn uncomfortable truths, not from being told, but from watching what happened when he expected something and did not receive it. He had learned to lower his expectations quietly, without announcement, without making it a thing. Theo's 4th birthday. Craig's son's 3rd birthday party was the same weekend. My parents attended Craig's party. I had sent the invitation 6 weeks in advance. My mother called and said she was sorry. They had already committed to Bryce's, and would it be okay if they came by the next day for cake? The next day visit lasted 40 minutes because Craig called during it, and my father took the call in the kitchen and talked for 25 of those. 40 minutes about Craig's upcoming drywall job, Theo's school play, 2nd grade. He was a tree. He had one line and he had practiced it for 3 weeks. My father had said he would be there. Craig called that morning with a plumbing emergency. Not a real plumbing emergency, a broken fixture, the kind of thing that takes an hour. My father went to help him instead. He texted me during the play, "How'd it go?" I said, "Fine." Theo's line was, "I have been here longer than you know." He said it perfectly. The soccer tournament this past spring. Theo's team made the semifinals. My dad said he would come to the Saturday game. He did not come. He went to Bryce's football scrimmage instead. He sent me a text that said, "Go Theo," with a trophy emoji at 2 p.m. Theo's game was at 10 a.m. The trophy emoji was sent 4 hours after the game ended. Christmas 2 years ago. My father to Theo, unprompted while we were opening presents. "You're going to have to work hard like your mom did." Craig's boy has it a little easier. He said it as wisdom. A thing you say to a child to prepare him. Theo looked at the floor for a moment and then looked back up and said, "Okay, Grandpa." He was 6. And then the cookout. The cookout was a Saturday in July. My parents' backyard, which is large and shaded in the afternoon. Good for the kind of family gathering that feels like nothing and contains everything. My mother had made potato salad and my father was at the grill. Craig was there with Tamsin and Bryce. My friend Scylla had come for the first hour with her daughter because she lives 2 streets over and my parents have always liked her. She was filming her daughter running through the sprinkler on her phone. Theo had ridden his bike over. He was proud of it. He had ridden it around the block twice before we arrived, showing me the bell worked, showing me the speed. He propped it against the fence near the gate and went to get a hot dog, and everything was ordinary. Bryce saw the bike first. He asked Theo if he could try it. Theo said yes. Bryce rode it twice around the yard. Then Craig walked over. He looked at the bike. He lifted it from Bryce by the handlebars and held it steady and looked it over the way you look at something you are pricing. Then he said, "This is a good bike, Bryce. You like it?" Bryce said, "Yeah." Craig said, "It's yours." I was standing 12 feet away next to the folding table with a plate in my hand. I heard it. I set the plate down. I said, "Craig." He looked at me. He was not aggressive. He was not angry. He was certain. The way a man is certain when he is doing something he has done his whole life and has never once been told it was wrong. He said to my father, not to me, loud enough that the whole yard could hear, "Your boy was never worth that bike." He nodded toward Theo. He'd trash it in a week anyway. My father laughed. Not a mean laugh, a comfortable laugh. The laugh of a man who finds his son funny and does not look too closely at what the joke just cost someone else. Wanda, my mother, was standing near the patio door. She looked at me, then she looked away. That look took about 1 second. It said, "I see this." It also said, "I am not going to do anything about it." I looked at Theo. He was looking at his shoes. He was not crying. He was 8 years old, and he was doing the thing I had watched him learn to do from this family over 4 years, which was to find the floor when the ceiling dropped and wait for it to pass. I said, "Let's go, baby." He said, "Okay." He walked to the gate. He did not look at the bike. I do not know if he thought about the $47 in that moment. I did not ask him. Some things you do not ask a child because the answer does not change anything and just makes them carry it twice. He looked out the window the whole drive home. I want to stop here for a moment because I think some of you have already been in a version of this. Car. Not this specific car on this specific highway exit in Nashville, but the one where your child has just been shown something true about the family you both belong to, and you are driving, and you cannot fix it right now, and you are deciding what to say and what to leave for later, and what to carry alone so they do not have to carry it yet. I want to stop here because I think some of you already understand what the next few hours felt like, and I do not want to rush past them. The specific weight of being in a car with your child after someone has done something that cost him something real, and keeping your voice even, and not explaining it, and deciding how to answer what has just happened. I did not make any calls that night. I did not text anyone. I did not post anything. I am telling you this because the assumption is always that the action is coming out of anger, and I want to be precise about what it was actually coming out of. It was coming out of clarity. There is a difference between those two things. Anger runs hot and wants an audience and wants to be witnessed making its point. Anger needs to say the thing out loud so someone else can confirm that yes, this was wrong. Clarity does not need confirmation. Clarity already knows. It just needs to wait until the child is asleep. Theo had dinner. He asked for pasta. I made it. We sat at the table, and he talked about a kid at school who had found a frog in the playground drainage ditch and brought it inside in his lunchbox, and the whole class had watched the teacher discover it, which Theo found funnier than anything that had happened to him in recent memory. He described it in detail, including the teacher's face, which he demonstrated for me. I laughed. The laughing was genuine. That is the thing about children. They keep moving. They find the frog in the lunchbox, and it becomes the most important thing in the world. And for a while, sitting at my kitchen table watching my son demonstrate a teacher's expression, the cookout receded to the distance it deserved. We watched 40 minutes of a nature documentary about birds. He went to bed without asking any more questions about the bike. He said goodnight the same way he always says goodnight, with a hug that is slightly longer than it needs to be. After he was asleep, I stood in the kitchen for a while. I thought about the 1-8 seconds. I thought about the $47. I thought about my father's laugh, which I have known my whole life, and which has always meant, this is fine, this is us, this is how we are. I thought about how a laugh that you have known your whole life can, in one afternoon, reveal a different shape underneath itself. Then I opened my laptop. The Nashville Contractor's Network Admin panel is not dramatic looking. It is a standard dashboard with a contractor list on the left side and a profile view on the right. Contractors are sorted alphabetically. Craig's listing is under his business name, Craig's Fix-It, Nashville. He has a profile photo, his license information, 17 client reviews averaging 4.2 stars, and a 3-year history of referrals that I can see in full. 287 referrals in 3 years. Current monthly referral value based on his average job size, $200. He has 3 pending bookings in the queue. One of them is a kitchen cabinet job booked for the following evening, a walkthrough at a client's home. Value, $3,400. He has never paid the $60 monthly platform fee. I had set the account to waive it when I added him, and then I had not thought about it again, because that is the thing about giving someone a favor informally. You stop thinking about it, and they stop thinking about it being a favor. At 8:08 p.m., I logged into the admin panel. At 8:10 p.m., I navigated to Craig's Fix-It Nashville. At 8:12 p.m., I clicked Archive Listing. The system asked, are you sure you want to archive this contractor? Archive listings are removed from search, and all pending referrals will be rerouted. I clicked yes. The whole thing took 4 minutes. That is the part nobody believes when I tell this story. 4 minutes, the same amount of time it takes to make a decent cup of coffee. 8 years of a pattern, 3 years of a listing, $47 saved in a Ziploc bag, and 4 minutes to close the file. The profile disappeared from search. The 3 pending referrals rerouted automatically to other contractors in the queue. The system sent an automated email to the client booked for the following evening. Your contractor has become unavailable. Your booking has been transferred. They will contact you shortly. I did not send Craig a message. I did not call him. I closed the laptop and went to bed. I learned what happened in his driveway later from Craig himself when he came to my porch and told me in the course of explaining why I was being unreasonable. At 8:00 p.m., his client had arrived at the address listed for the walkthrough. At 8:03 p.m., the client had received the automated email and left. At 8:12 p.m., Craig had walked outside to check the driveway. He had been helping clean up at my parents' house and had his phone in his pocket, volume down. The client's car was gone. There was a voicemail. Hey, got an email saying you're unavailable. They've sent me to someone else. Give me a call. He stood at his driveway. He looked at the space where the car had been. He did not know what had happened yet. He would not know for 3 days. I am telling you this not as a triumphant detail, but as a factual one. I am a contractor. I believe in cause and effect. I believe in consequences that fit the action. He took something from my son without ceremony, without discussion, as if reallocation was simply within his rights. I removed something of his with the same absence of ceremony. I did not tell him. I did not explain. I did not give him the opportunity to frame it as a dispute. Some things do not need to be disputes. The next morning at 9:14 a.m., my neighbor Scylla texted me. I was trying to get Mia doing the sprinkler thing. Your brother walked into it. I kept recording because I didn't know what else to do. The video was 17 seconds long. She had been filming her daughter, and Craig had stepped into the frame at the edge of the shot. The angle caught him from the side, lifting the bike by the handlebars, looking it over, saying something to Bryce. The audio was clear enough. You could hear, it's yours. You could hear my voice saying Craig's name. You could hear his response. You could hear my father's laugh. And for 1.8 seconds, at the left edge of the frame, you could see Theo, looking at his shoes. I watched those 1.8 seconds 4 times. I texted Scylla, thank you. I did not tell her what I had done the night before. I did not tell anyone what I had done. I put my phone face down and made coffee and thought about the 1.8 seconds and about the $47 in the Ziploc bag and about the way Theo's voice had sounded in the car when he said, Mom, I saved up for it. The third day, Craig texted, Hey, something weird happened with my listing on the platform. Can you check it? I read the text. I did not respond. My father called the same day. I let it go to voicemail. He left 22 seconds. He mentioned the cookout. He mentioned that Craig's feelings were a little hurt about the way I had left. He mentioned that family sticks together. He used the word family 3 times in 22 seconds. He did not say Theo's name once. I listened to the voicemail twice. I noted the word that was missing. Then I deleted it. On day 4, Craig came to my porch. He had driven over. He knocked in the way people knock when they have prepared something to say and want credit for delivering it in person rather than by text. I opened the door and did not invite him in. He stood at the bottom of the porch steps and I stood at the top. My neighbor Scylla was in her front garden across the street, pulling weeds. She did not look over. She was there. Craig would have seen her. I did not plan for that. I simply did not go inside when he arrived. He opened with the platform. There must have been a technical issue. His listing was gone, his pending jobs rerouted. A client he had known for 2 years was asking why he had been removed from the recommended list. I said, I archived your listing Saturday at 8:12 p.m. That is a fact, not an argument. I watched him absorb it. He said, because of a bike. He started to build the version of events he had assembled over 4 days. The bike was a kid thing. Kids outgrow bikes. Bryce had been wanting one for months. Theo would have another by Christmas. He said it was not a big deal and I was making it one, which was something I had always done. Take a small thing and turn it into a statement about the whole family. He said I was punishing him. He said I was hurting his business over something that did not matter. I did not argue. I let him finish. Scylla had straightened up across the street. She was not looking at us, but she had stopped moving. When Craig ran out of sentence, I reached into my pocket. I took out my phone. I opened the video. I set the phone on the porch railing, face up, screen toward him. I pressed play. His own voice came out of the speaker. Your boy was never worth that bike. 17 seconds. My father's laugh at the end. Wanda at the edge of the frame, looking away. Craig stood at the bottom of my porch steps and watched himself. His face went flat. The particular flatness of a man hearing his own words without the context that made them feel reasonable when he said them. He heard the certainty in his own voice and it did not sound the way it had felt. He tried 3 things, not in anger. In sequence, he said, that was one moment. You're not seeing the whole picture. I said nothing. He said, I'd had a couple drinks. I wasn't thinking. I said nothing. He said, quieter. You're going to let this be the end of it? I picked up the phone. I said, the listing is archived. It's not coming back. Then I went inside. The door made the sound a door makes when someone closes it without urgency. That is the most final sound there is. On day 5, Tamsin texted, I saw what happened at the cookout. I should have said something. I'm sorry I didn't. It was short. It had no asks in it. It was just a woman saying a true thing about a moment she had been carrying for 5 days. I sat with that text for longer than I expected to. I wrote back, I know you saw it. Thank you. That was the whole exchange. But it was the first honest thing anyone on Craig's side of the family had offered. And it mattered in the way small honest things always matter when you have been swimming in large dishonest silences. On day 6, my father called again. This time I answered. He had had 6 days to think and he had used them to become firmer. He said Craig had a business. He said family does not sabotage family's livelihood. He said mixing a kid's disagreement with a grown man's business was not right and it was not fair, and he expected better from me. I waited for him to finish. Then I asked him one question. I said, Dad, what is Theo's name? He said, what? I said, my son, your grandson. What is his name? He said, Theo's name. I said, you've called me twice in 6 days. You've mentioned Craig's feelings. You've mentioned Craig's business. You used the word family 4 times in this call alone. How many times have you said Theo's name in the last 6 days? Silence, not the silence of someone thinking. The silence of someone who has just seen something they have been standing in front of for years without looking directly at it. I said, that's the whole thing, Dad. I hung up. I did not slam the phone down. I set it on the counter and filled a glass of water and stood at the kitchen window and looked at the backyard where Theo's basketball hoop stood, slightly crooked because we had installed it together 2 springs ago, and neither of us is particularly precise about that kind of level. I thought about him saying, Mom, I saved up for it. I thought, yes, you did, and that matters. And the people who could not see that it mattered are going to have to figure out what to do with that information. That is not my problem anymore. By the end of the 2nd week, the network had fully rerouted Craig's referrals. The $4, $200 a month in booked work was flowing to other contractors on the platform. Licensed, insured, paying their $60 a month, doing their work without requiring a family exemption or a favor that was never formally recorded. A property manager who had sent Craig 6 jobs in the past year texted me asking if he was still on the recommended list. I said he had been removed and offered to recommend others. She said that was fine and asked for 3 names. I gave her 3. She said, thank you. Craig texted once more with an apology that was mostly an explanation. He said the bike situation had been misunderstood, that he had not meant anything by it, that he hoped we could move forward as a family, and whether I might consider reinstating his listing once things settled down. He used the word family twice. He did not use Theo's name. I read it. I did not respond. He texted a second time, shorter, just a request to be put back on the platform. No explanation, just the ask. The way he had always asked for things, directly, without building the case for it, because he had never had to. I read that one too. I thought about the 1.8 seconds, the ziplock bag, my father's laugh. I did not respond. I did add something to the platform that week. I had a lawyer friend review the terms of service, and we updated them to formalize the fee structure and remove the family rate category, which had existed as an unspoken exception for 3 years without ever being written down anywhere. The updated terms went out to all 140 contractors on the platform. Everyone acknowledged and signed. Family rate is no longer a category. Some things you do not formalize until the moment arrives that teaches you why you always should have. My Aunt Rita called on day 8. She is my father's older sister, 64 years old, and she has been attending family events long enough to have seen every version of the pattern I described to you in every generation it has produced. She does not have children of her own. She has always paid more attention to the children around her than the people who assume they have her full focus tend to realize. She had heard about the cookout from my cousin Lourdes, who had been there and had talked about it to 2 other people before the week was out. The way information moves through a family, whether or not you intend it to. Rita called me on a Tuesday evening while I was finishing a materials estimate at the kitchen table. I saw her name and picked up without letting it go to voicemail, which I had been doing to most calls that week. She said, "Lourdes told me what happened with Theo and the bike." She did not say anything else for a moment. Then she said, "That's not right." 3 words. No performance in them. No claim that it was complicated or that Craig had his reasons or that family sticks together above all else. Just, "That's not right." Said in the flat tone of a woman who has been saying true things plainly for 64 years and has learned that the plain version is the only one that holds. I told her about Theo's $47, about the Ziploc bag, about the way he had organized it into 3 separate denominations with a rubber band. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Gene raised Craig wrong. That's the whole of it." I did not cry on that call, but something that had been held very tightly for 8 days released, just slightly, not dramatically, not visibly. The particular small relief of one person saying a true thing plainly, in the same tone you'd use to read a weather report with no agenda attached to it. I thanked her. She said she would check on Theo. She did check on Theo. She brought him a book about trains the following Saturday. Drove across town to do it. Did not make a thing of it. Left after 40 minutes. Theo said she smelled like lavender and that she knew a lot about trains. Both of these things are true. My mother called on day 10. She did not apologize. Wanda is not built for that word, has never been. But she asked about Theo. She asked what he needed. I told her Theo was fine. She said, "I should have said something." I said, "I know." We left it there. It is not everything. It is also not nothing. And sometimes the distance between everything and nothing is exactly the length of one sentence said on day 10. 3 weeks after the cookout, on a Saturday morning, I took Theo to a bike shop on Nolensville Road. I did not tell him the full story. He is 8. He will know more of it when he is older, when the shape of a family and the choices people make inside it start to make sense to him in a way they cannot yet. For now, he knew that his bike had been taken and that I was getting him a new one, and that this was not a debt he owed anyone. He picked a blue one with silver handlebars. He stood in front of it for a while before he said anything. That is how Theo makes decisions. He looks at the thing for a long time before he commits, which is a quality I recognize and try not to interfere with. He said, "Is it too expensive?" I said, "No." He said, "Should I use my savings?" I said, "Save your money." He said, "For what?" I said, "For whatever you want." He thought about that for a moment. Then he nodded. Then he asked if it had a bell. It had a bell. We paid and took it outside, and he rode it in the parking lot while I sat on the curb and watched. He was not thinking about the cookout. He was thinking about the bike, whether the seat was the right height, whether the bell had a good sound, whether he could make it to the corner and back before I called him over. He could. He did. He rode back to where I was sitting with his hair pushed back from his forehead by the speed, and his expression the specific expression of a child who has gotten something right. I was not thinking about Craig. I was not thinking about my father. I was not calculating what had been lost or redistributed or corrected. I was thinking about the silver handlebars and the morning light and the particular way Theo's face looks when he is purely inside a thing and not watching himself from the outside. That look is the whole reason. Not the network, not the 8:12 p.m., not the porch or the video or the conversation with my father. The reason was that look, and it had been briefly interrupted by a family that did not count him the way they should have, and now it was back. He rode back to me. He said, "Can we go this way?" He pointed down the street. I said yes. He went. I watched him go, both hands on the handlebars. Bell ringing for no reason except that he could. That is where this story ends. Not with a speech, not with a verdict. With a boy on a blue bike on a Saturday morning in Nashville, riding down a street he picked himself with money in his pocket that is his, going wherever he decides. If you have ever watched a child learn early that asking does not always work on certain sides of certain families, and you have felt the specific weight of that education arriving somewhere you were trying to protect, this story is for you. You are allowed to remove what you built from the people who mistook your generosity for infrastructure. You are allowed to do it quietly at 8:12 p.m. without a speech, without a warning, without giving them the opportunity to frame your response as the overreaction before you have even made it. You are allowed to let the consequence be as ordinary and unannounced as the thing that caused it. That is the part people always ask about. They ask, but how do you not say anything? How do you sit in that driveway and not turn the car around? How do you open the laptop and not write the message first? The answer is that you think about the 1.8 seconds. You think about the ziplock bag. You think about what your child looks like when he has already decided not to ask for help. And the question of whether to say something becomes very simple, because what you have to say does not fit in a text message or a phone call or an argument in a backyard. It fits in a quiet admin action at 8:12 p.m. on a Saturday night, after the pasta and the nature documentary and the hug that lasts slightly too long. The explanation is in the thing that was there and then wasn't. In the driveway where someone stood looking at the space where their assumption used to be. Share this with someone who needs it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.